So we've actually, you want to go ahead and take it?
Let's do it.
Is it Cesar?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes?
Who's this?
Cesar?
Cesar?
Cesar, how you doing? It's Matt and Tracie.
Fine. I'm on air now?
You are on the air now.
Oh, okay. I would like to start off with a question. Are you guys materialists?
Well, you want to start? Or
I guess if you're talking about in the sense of, that the natural world appears to be what is, yes.
Okay. Well, since you're a materialist, what kind of evidence do you have to support your materialism?
The natural world manifests itself. I mean, it's here.
Well,
you can see it.
Well, I know. I mean, the natural world is just evidence for the natural world.
right, and if there's something beyond the natural world, it would need to be justified by evidence.
Yeah, I'd want that to manifest as well in some way.
Yeah, but that's like a neutral statement. See, none of us have the edge here. It's like
No. The edge is towards what things that are supported by evidence.
I'm saying what manifests is what exists.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, like, the natural world is not for or against God. I mean,
okay.
So it's really like a neutral statement. It's really not for one or the other side. It's right in the middle.
What's a neutral statement?
Just materialism?
That you believe in the natural world, because there's no evidence that, well, there's some things that might be evidence to your opinion, but there's generally science doesn't say there is a God, there isn't a God.
Science operates with the presumption of methodological naturalism, not philosophical naturalism. It's not proposing that nothing other than the natural world exists. It just
no, exactly. So that means you really don't have an opinion.
I'm sorry?
About God or no God. So it's basically
no.
Well, wait. If you're saying that materialism itself is not a statement about whether or not a God exists, I would say my atheism is what that statement is. Materialism.
Well, exactly. I know that. I mean, but generally most atheists are materialists. So it's like, my point is I like to see evidence for atheism. And that's why
there is no thing.
Atheism doesn't assert something.
Yeah, it's like saying, I don't believe in Bigfoot, and if we put a label on that and call it a Bigfootism, a Bigfootism is a rejection of a claim.
Yeah, but see, the problem with that is I can play the same game. I can call myself a materialist. Now, I don't believe in materialism, and I don't need to defend myself either.
Okay, you can, but the point here is, okay, with philosophical materialism or naturalism, the assertion is that the material world or the natural world is in fact all that exists. What my position is that materialism and naturalism seem to be most likely true, in the sense that there has not been any evidence presented for anything beyond the material or natural world. But the moment that such evidence is presented, then I will no longer adopt the position philosophically of materialism or naturalism. What exists, what is demonstrable, what manifests, as Tracie would point out, that's justified. And if we're going to extend to that and say that there's some likelihood or probability that something exists in addition to this, then that is the claim for which evidence needs to be supported. I'm not asserting absolute certainty that nothing beyond the natural world exists. The only way your objection holds any merit is if we rely on claims of absolute certainty. And I reject absolute certainty across the board. The only place where absolute certainty is even feasible is with regard to labels and esoteric knowledge.
Well, yeah, as human beings, we can't be certain of anything. We're not,
we can be pretty certain of things.
Universe. I mean, that goes without saying. I mean, I believe in God, but I like to say I'm a 100% believer, but I can't, because I have to be humble about it. I'm only human, so
the question, though, is why?
What do you believe in? Why?
What do you believe in about God, and what's the justification for it?
Well, I have some evidence. I don't have proof. I mean, there's evidence and then there's proof.
Well, proof applies to mathematics. Evidence is just, we're talking about determining whether or not something's real. It's a preponderance of evidence. It is a weighting of evidence. So what exactly do you believe? Because you say you believe in God, but that doesn't tell me much, because I don't know what you mean by that. Well, so how would you define God?
See, I don't need to define God the same
Sure
way
you do.
science doesn't need to define gravity.
No. If you say you believe in something, you have to have some definition of it. You have to have some conception.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, I believe in gravity, but I can't define it to you.
I can. Why can't you?
I can even
All I
demonstrate
can say
it.
about gravity is that it holds me down to Earth, and through science, I know it bends space-time, it warps it.
Gravity.
But I can't tell
So
you.
you do know something about gravity and its characteristics,
Well,
even though
I know
you don't.
some things about God as well.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what is it that you know about God?
Well, everybody knows certain things about God. It's been revealed that He's omniscient, He's omnipresent.
How do you know
No.
these things?
Not everybody asserts that about a God.
Well, it's been revealed through history, and I don't really want to get
Through history. How does history reveal that a God exists that's omniscient and omnipresent?
Apollo wasn't omniscient and omnipresent.
No, and Apollo is a caricature of a human being.
He was a
really.
god.
Yeah, but those gods, ancient gods, are caricatures of
Yahweh is
man.
an ancient god.
And yeah, why is yours excluded?
Those are myths because those are caricatures of man and nature.
So is
You can-
Yahweh.
And yours isn't?
No, God is no caricature of anything material. I mean, you can't even compare God to a man or to a tree or to a mountain.
What is it then?
Well, we know certain things about God. I mean, yes. It's been
Okay,
revealed
and
through
I've asked
history.
3 or 4 times now, what are those certain things?
Well, He's omniscient. He has all knowledge.
How,
I mean,
how do
like-
you know this?
Well, in order to create the universe,
Oh,
you
so
have
wait.
to have all knowledge of the
How-
universe.
So now we're asserting that he created the universe.
Okay, now there's 2 problems there. One, I don't accept your assertion that in order to create something, you have to know everything about it. I mean, that doesn't follow. But second of all, you've made another assertion that, as Tracie pointed out, God created the universe. How do you know this?
Well, there's evidence. Well, let me get back to science. And there's the finely
You haven't
tuned
been near
universe.
science. How can you get back to it? I mean, okay, offer your evidence. Go ahead.
Well, there's the finely tuned universe.
Yes, there is the argument from fine-tuning, the anthropic principle, which is actually an argument against God.
The anthropic principle is a pure hypothesis. There is no evidence for other universes.
The anthropic principle doesn't necessitate other universes.
Yeah, it can
It's-
also be by luck or by, I believe those two. There's 3. I think there's 2, by luck or multi-universe.
No, I'm talking about the anthropic principle, the fact, the version of the teleological argument that argues that Earth is finely tuned for life. There's still nothing within there that says that it necessarily needed to be finely tuned by an intelligent, creative being.
Yeah, but I'm not just talking about life. I'm talking about the universe itself. I mean,
Really? And you think
Yeah,
the
it's
universe? You think the universe itself is tuned for what?
to exist. So let me give you an example.
Tuned to exist.
Wait.
I agree. Those things that exist are
Exist.
tuned to exist. Can you get any more circular than that?
Yes, but wait, let me explain. It's really short.
Yes, it is. That which exists exists.
I know, but it's still a roll of a die. If you don't there's still two possibilities. Either it was designed, chance, or the multi-universe. And the reason why I believe it was designed
That's 3.
because
That's 3 of your 2 possibilities.
yeah, there's 3. I mean, those are the only 3. If you have a 4th, I'd like to hear it. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. You said there were 2, and then you gave me 3.
2 for the
I'm not
materialist.
necessarily convinced that you've come close to listing all the possible ones. But go ahead.
All right. Well, there's the expansion rate of the universe, and I'm not making this up. This is pure science. I think Stephen Hawking talked about it. First of all,
Who doesn't
the
believe in-
expansion rate of the universe had to be exactly the way it was. If it was 1 billionth of a billionth too fast, it would have flown apart and no stars would have formed.
That's correct.
1 billionth of a billionth too slow, it would have recollapsed in itself.
That's correct. I will grant your claims across the board that if any number of natural physical laws of our universe had turned out slightly different, then the universe as we know it would not exist. It would exist perhaps in
Different
some
form.
other form, and perhaps some other form of
In
life
that
might.
example I just gave you, yeah, you're right. But in that example I just gave you, there's a billionth of a billionth. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers.
I tell you what, I don't know the exact number either, and I don't know the exact number for this, but I'll get it pretty close. Let's say we deal out a hand of 13 cards to you for a game of bridge. What are the odds that you get all 13 cards of the same suit? I think it's 1 in either 60 or 600 billion. But what are the odds that you would be dealt the Queen of Clubs, the Ace of Diamonds, the Two of Spades, etc., just a hand that doesn't really mean a whole lot? It's the exact same odds. Saying that because something is unlikely or improbable, that it therefore couldn't happen, is absurd when we know in fact it did. It doesn't matter how improbable the current state of the universe is. You are judging it based on looking at the current outcome as a goal. That's not the case.
Right. Whatever hand you would get would have the same odds of having been the hand you got, no matter what hand you got, a random hand or one that was sequential.
Yeah, but you're comparing apples and oranges.
No, I'm not. I'm comparing probabilities
in fact,
and probabilities.
It was a very good analogy. I wish I would have thought of it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but there's a mathematical, I don't know what you will call
it. All right. Because there are other callers waiting, and because Tracie wants to get to this, can you just give me whatever and by the way, even if you were correct, even if your bald assertion that the anthropic principle of the teleological argument was evidence that there had to have been some kind of creator, that tells me nothing at all about what kind of creator there was. It doesn't tell me whether or not it is omniscient, omnipresent. It doesn't even tell me if that being still exists. It could have been something like what deists propose, a creative force that created the universe and then ceased to exist or ceased to intervene. You can't get from A to B. So what do you believe about God and why? Last chance.
Well, can I answer your argument right there?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're asking for an explanation of the explanation. I mean, science doesn't even operate that way. It's like you can't have an explanation of an explanation of an explanation. There'll be an infinite regress, and you'll never have the answers to anything.
No. Yes, you're kind of correct. You can, in fact, have an explanation for the explanation. We do have the problem that you point out about a potential infinite regress, all of which is irrelevant to what I'm talking about. We tend to explain things in terms of things that are already understood. It's a bottom-up process. We understand a particular principle, and there are some things that we accept by brute force as just, this is the way it works. These are the laws of physics. Logic and math, those aren't proscriptive, they're descriptive. They describe the reality that we exist in. They are base facts. Those are your beginning points. And what you're doing is asserting that the universe can't be a brute force fact in and of itself. It must have an explanation. And then you're saying we don't need to know anything about that explanation, and it could have just been a brute force fact by itself. That doesn't fly.
Well, no, because, I mean, like, again, with gravity, we understand some things about gravity. We don't understand everything about gravity.
Right.
Like, gravity is immaterial.
But it's
an
demonstrable.
invisible force.
Yeah, but
it's demonstrable. I wouldn't call it immaterial.
It is immaterial. You can't see it.
No, it manifests in the material world.
Yes, it does. It does manifest.
It's a manifestation, then.
There you go. You're looking at gravity in operation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of invisible, immaterial things that exist in this material universe. I mean, like, so that's proof right there that immaterial things do exist.
It's not immaterial.
No. It is manifesting. Its effects are manifesting. This is like the people who call in to say that we have no evidence that the wind exists because you can't see it. No, you can see its effects.
Vision is only one form of recognizing a manifestation. There are many ways to recognize a manifestation. When I go to lift my arm, the force that pulls it back down, I'm asserting force against a force, which means that I can experience gravity every time I lift a hand.
So what's your manifestation of God?
Well, I have more evidence. I don't think I have the time, but what I can say is
how can you have more evidence when you haven't offered any at all yet?
No, because you reject my evidence.
That's correct.
Yeah,
I reject
the problem.
I reject the things that you assert as evidence, and here's why.
Yeah, but see, here's
why. Here's why, and I'll promise I'll let you answer this. Can you give me a piece of evidence, any piece of evidence, that would support your belief about a God that doesn't support some other opposing belief about a God? That's the thing about evidence, is it not only if we're talking about whether or not something exists, we need to be able to demonstrate that it manifests in some way, because that which does not manifest is indistinguishable from things that don't exist. But the evidence that you offer has to be distinct. It's like people who claim, I prayed to God and I got better. Okay, that's anecdotal evidence, and the reason it can't be used as proof of your God or of your specific God is because people can make that claim for multiple different gods, and some people who make that claim, when we investigate for things like this, we find out that there's no evidence behind that there is a God who intervened. They were on medication or whatever, or went into remission. So what we need is a piece of evidence that is distinct. For example, that is an observable manifestation of gravity. We can then begin to measure and analyze that. Is there any distinct piece of evidence to support your belief in a God? And if not, why do you get to make a special exemption for that belief as opposed to the others?
Well, that's the problem. I mean, you can't pigeonhole God into the physical universe. I mean, like, I'll try my best to answer your question. I guess it will have to be creation, and I know there's alternate explanations, like
what justification do you have for calling it creation? I mean, I hate to keep stopping you as soon as you get started, but every bit of terminology that you use is assuming the very thing that you're trying to prove.
All right, well, we can call it origins, which is plain semantics here, like origins of the universe.
Okay, the origins of the universe. How is that evidence for God? How is it a manifestation of God?
Well, because you need the immovable mover, again.
No, you don't. Goodbye. You didn't give any evidence. You just offered an assertion that you need an immovable mover.
I just want to say one thing, and I wish I don't know how to make this clear, but getting people to say that, hey, it does, even if you were to call and convince me that, it does seem like maybe this would need something to get it rolling, we haven't really demonstrated anything. Getting people to agree with you that the universe requires a designer doesn't illustrate anything. That's not evidence. That's just simply getting people to agree with you about something. Getting people to agree with me that something I think is logical doesn't mean that what I think is right. When people try to use logic to prove that something exists, I'm sorry, but in some ways it's almost like a waste of time, because unless you're going to get to a point where you're actually going to verify and demonstrate the thing exists, then we're just spinning wheels, and it's just like mental masturbation. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah.
You're sitting around, and we'll sit around, and okay, this and this and this, and even if you totally convince me that yes, this requires a creator, all we've done is now we agree it requires a creator. Well, how do we know we're right? How do we demonstrate we're right? We don't know whether or not what we believe is actually true, or what we're thinking we should believe is actually true. And the only way to demonstrate it would be to find some way to demonstrate it. And if you're not going to get down to it eventually and say, I'm going to get off my logic horse here, and I'm going to actually get to where I'm demonstrating that what I'm saying is for real, then it's a waste of time. The arguments for God, to me, are kind of a waste of time. The apologetics are like a waste of time. I want to see the measurable manifestation of what you're talking about, because that would be something. And if you don't have a measurable manifestation, you don't have something, you have nothing. And I'm not going to label nothing as God just because someone tells me that I should.
Yeah, and to slightly depart from what Tracie's saying, I'm fine with somebody demonstrating something logically. The problem is that you need to, and I don't know why we should need to explain this at all. The basic foundational principle of logic is the exclusive or. It's either A or not A, and those are the only two options that there can possibly be. This is the foundation of logic and reason. And from that point, you can construct a logical syllogism that is both valid and sound, and if you don't know the difference, look it up. You can actually go to ironchariots.org, the nice wiki that myself and Russell and many of the fans of the show have put together, and it talks about validity and soundness in syllogisms. Yet there has not been a single logical syllogism in the entire history of humankind that is both valid and sound and demonstrates the existence of a God. They all fail with some logical fallacy or another, or they make a premise that is unsupported, and therefore it makes them unsound. But I would say that if we had a logical syllogism that we could demonstrate was both valid and sound, and the premises were true, that logic tells us that the conclusion must be true, even if we couldn't, as Tracie pointed out, identify the manifestation. The problem is that when we're talking about things and determining what exists and what doesn't exist, Tracie's right. Normally, we begin, first of all, with an observation and try to come up with an explanation for it. And we tend to explain
What's
things.
causing this?
Yes. And so, in this case, the observation is existence. What caused existence?
And that begs the question of whether or not existence requires an explanation.
Yeah.
And that's not that is not known.
Yeah.
That is not a given.
You need to begin by demonstrating that the universe could not have always existed in some form, which tends to be mostly consistent with. Plus, you get the problem with the laws of physics breaking down and time and blah, blah, blah. And it's way too much to get into. But here's